Okay, again, good morning, everyone. Jodie Siemens here from Taking Perspective, and today's webinar is on effective decision making. Thank you for all of those who are joining me live. Thank you for all those who registered to receive the webinar in your email box, as you weren't able to be here live to see the PowerPoint. Okay, so effective decision making. All right, so when it comes to effective decision making, I've come up with 3 topics that I think are quite important. How do we choose between possible solutions? What can prevent you from effective decision making? And why good decisions matter? And I've also thrown just something else in the middle there too, which you will get to find out about. Okay, so how do we choose between possible solutions? So what it means is to find a solution to a problem that involves constructing a certain course of action that will transform and take you from your current situation and into a situation where your objective is achieved, right? So what you're doing here is effectively problem solving. So once you define effectively what the problem is, you can then, sometimes that's all you need, and sometimes you need to go a little bit deeper and find another course of action to help you problem solve. So what I've got here is a 6-step guide to solving problems, okay? So the first step is identify and define the problem. So state the problem as clearly as possible. Really get clear on the intention behind what the actual problem is. For example, I don't have enough money to pay my bills. So be really specific about the behavior, the situation, potentially the timing, the circumstances around it. So we can reframe that into, I need to pay my phone bill and electricity bills, and I don't have enough money to cover them both this month. So you can see how specific you actually bring that down to. Step 2 is generating possible solutions. So make a list of all the possible solutions, really brainstorm it and get everything out on paper. Don't worry about the quality of the solutions at this stage, just brain dump everything and get it all out. Try and make a list of at least 15 solutions and get creative. And again, still forget about the quality of the solution at this point. Just be creative about your solutions. If you allow yourself to be creative, you may find yourself coming up with solutions that you would otherwise not have actually thought of. Step 3 is evaluating alternatives. So this is a step about going through and eliminating the less desirable solutions, or maybe you call them undesirable solutions, out of the top 15 that you've come up with. Order the remaining in order of preference, and then you can evaluate the remaining solutions in terms of what their pros and cons are. What are their advantages and disadvantages? Step 4, decide on a solution. So get specific on who will take action. Specify how the solution will be implemented. Specify when the solution will be implemented. For example, tomorrow morning, the phone and gas company, I'm going to call the phone and gas company and negotiate how to pay the bills next month on a payment plan. Just as an example, going back to the first example we used. Step 5, implement the solution. So implementing the solution as you have planned it. You need to take action and actually do something about it. All right. Step 6 is evaluate the outcome. So evaluate how effective the solution actually was. Decide whether the existing plan needs to be revised, or whether you just need to come up with a completely new plan and better address the problem. You know, go through and do the pros and cons, what went wrong, what can we do better. That's, of course, if something went wrong. If you're not pleased with the outcome, return back to step 2, which is generate possible solutions and brainstorm them again, revise the existing solution and repeat the remaining steps. So go back through 3, 4, 5 and 6, and just keep doing that as a process of how to solve problems. So learning is how to problem solve effectively, and this will help you minimize all sorts of level of stress in your life and improve your overall sense of well-being. So here I threw in a little bit about intuition and reasoning and the role that your intuition and reasoning play in making decisions. So your intuition is really about using your gut feeling and the possible courses of action. So although a lot of people think about intuition as some sort of magical sense, intuition is actually a combination of your past experiences and your own personal values. So when you're making a decision and you feel a little bit uncomfortable and there might be a little bit of dissonance about it, that's your internal self telling you that something isn't quite right. So it's really worth taking your intuition into account because it reflects your learnings in your life. It, however, is not always reality, based on reality, because sometimes our perceptions are just that, some of which started in early childhood and may not be as well used as mature adults, for example. Sometimes we do things and we create a belief around something that doesn't actually exist. So basically, it is about, it's worth examining your gut feeling really closely, especially if you have a very strong feeling against a particular course of action. It's really worth trying to work out why you feel that way and really get in tune with the feelings and emotions around that and create some emotional intelligence by stepping back and reflecting and really taking in, why do I feel this way? What is happening? And asking yourself some serious questions if you are really feeling strongly against something. So reasoning is about using the facts and figures in front of you to make decisions. So reasoning has its roots on the here and now. It's about facts. However, a lot of the time, we ignore the emotional aspect of the decision, and in particular, issues can arise again from the past and may affect the decision that's being implemented. So we do have to be careful about that. So here we are with the applying both intuition and reasoning. So our intuition is our right brain and our reasoning is our left brain. And one way to apply both aspects is a useful start with reason. Gather your facts and your figures. And once you have an obvious decision, then turn it over to your intuition and work out how you actually feel about the answer. Does it feel right? So if you're, if not, have another look again and see what might be working out for you or not working out for you. If you're not emotionally committed to the decision you have made, you won't implement it in any way effectively. So that's something really important. You have to be emotionally invested in the decision for it to be effective. So moving on to what can prevent you from effective decision making. So the first one I've got here is decisions need to be capable of being implemented, whether they are personal or on an organisational level. You therefore need to be committed to this decision personally, as I spoke about, and be able to persuade others of its merits. So an effective decision-making process, therefore, needs to be able to ensure you can do these things. So if, I've got 6 problems that can prevent people from effective decision making. And the first one is not enough information. So if you don't have enough information, it can feel as though you're making a decision without a basis. So you need to take the time to gather the necessary data to help you make a better informed decision. Even if the timescale is tight, it's better to make sure that you get the right data in and you make the correct decision. Prioritize your information gathering on which information is most important to you. The second problem that people come up against is sometimes they have too much information. So it's the opposite. But this one seems quite surprising, and often when we start gathering too much information, we start to get conflicted because we get to a point where we can't see the wood for the trees. This is something that we call analysis paralysis, which is a funny term. And it's often used as a tactic to delay organisational decision making. If you're within an organisation, they will use it to delay the decision making. And this is often around things that are very involved and very demanding on the information before they decide. So the problem can be resolved by getting everyone together and decide on what information is actually important and what is not. So prioritising that information, setting a clear timescale on the decision making, and including the information gathering stage. The next problem that we face with decision making is too many people. Sometimes any decision is better than none. For example, if you're on a committee, making decisions on a committee can be very difficult. Everyone has their own views, their own beliefs, their own values, and they bring those to the table. And while it's important to have all these views, and that's why we have committees, to make sure that we can represent the broader, like if it's a club, excuse me, represent the broader club because we have all these different personalities. It's also really important that you essentially assign at least one person to take responsibility for actually making the decision. So whether that's the president or of the committee, the secretary, whatever it may be, because decisions need to be made and you can loop and you can go around in circles. The next one we have is vested interest. So by this, I mean decision-making processes are often founded under the weight of vested interests. So vested interests are not something that is overly expressed, but is a crucial blockage to decision making, because when they're not overtly expressed, it's really hard to identify them clearly and therefore address them. But it can be sometimes possible to do so if you're exploring them with someone outside the process in a similar situation or position. So often it can help explore the rational and intuitive aspects with so if you're in a corporation, maybe it's the stakeholders that you're doing that with, usually with an external facilitator to support the process. So yeah, a lot of people will have, if they're shareholders within the company and all that sort of stuff, they have a vested interest, but they may, to try and sway a decision a certain way. Number 5 is emotional attachments. People are often very attached to the status quo. Decisions tend to involve the prospect of change. A lot of people find change difficult, so that can be a tricky one for some people to get past. And the last one, number 6, no emotional attachment. So sometimes this is even difficult because you get the people that have the attitude they just don't care either way. So in this case, this structured decision-making process can often help people identify the real pros and cons of particular actions. So perhaps they hadn't thought of that before. So someone who really doesn't care either way is really neutral to what's going on. So they can really help you go, well, this is good about it and this is bad about it. So many of the issues that can be overcome by structured decision making will ultimately help you reduce more complicated decisions down to simpler steps. You'll see how decisions arrived at, you'll plan your decisions and meet your deadlines. So many of these techniques that people use for effective decision making have been developed by, raising all sorts of procedures, and the method ultimately comes down to the nature of the decision and how complex it is and what needs to be made. So this way or that way, why good decisions matter. So the ability to make a good decision can ultimately help us be happier. We have better human relations when we make good decisions. When we understand how we feel about certain decisions that we have to make, we can look at them on a little bit more of a realistic level. And it's possible that we get to look at them more on a cognitive level, because we can actually see what's happening, and this allows us to make better decisions. So making a decision is perhaps the most important concept that leaders do, even within your household. Decisions have to be made every day about all aspects of our lives. So it really does play an important role in making sure you're making the right decisions, and there's some sort of process in place that helps you weigh up the pros and cons on every decision that you make. Sometimes we can, if we need to make a quick decision, we do revert back to our intuition. I know I do that personally. I tend to go with my gut feeling a lot, and it's always pretty much served me well if I've had to make a quick decision. So when leaders plan, they tend to decide how many matters of what goals they have in the organisation, and what they actually want to pursue, what resources they will use, and who they will perform each task and what's required. So that's what I mean about the planning process. You delegate and you have a clear plan in place. So in summary, remember, deciding not to decide is still a decision. I love that. Remember, deciding not to decide is still a decision. So what it means is to find a solution to in summary, what it means is to find a solution to a problem that involves constructing a course of action that will transform your current situation into a place where your objective is being achieved. And this can be done through 6 steps, and I'll just reread them to you. Step 1, identify and define the problem, generate possible solutions, evaluate alternatives, decide on a solution, implement the solution, and evaluate the outcome. And if you want more on those, just rewind back and there's a better description. So learning to solve problems effectively will help you minimize the level of stress in your life and give you an overall sense of well-being. So it's worth examining your gut feeling more closely, especially if you have strong feelings against a course of action and you're feeling some uncomfortability. These things can even come out physically in us. They can cause us headaches. We can feel physically ill. So when that happens, you really need to understand why you are feeling that way and whether or not this feeling is justified. You need to examine that emotion. and that feeling. So reasoning has its roots in the here and now. It's all about facts. But we can't just ignore the emotional aspect of decision making. So in the past, effective decision making has been implemented with both facts and intuition. So it's useful to start with reason, go through your facts and figures, and once you have an obvious decision that's at the top of your list, it's now time to turn to your intuition. How do you feel about the answer? Does it feel right? Okay. I came up with 6 problems that can prevent effective decision making, and those start with not enough information, too much information, too many people trying to make one decision, people having invested interests in trying to sway a decision a particular way, emotional attachments and non-emotional attachments. So the ability to make good decisions can help us become happier people and thus happier human relations with people. Okay, so that's the end of today's webinar on effective decision making. Thank you for all those who registered, and you will receive this in your email box. Thank you for all those who joined me live here. I am now uploading these audios to Anchor, and my podcast is called Empowering Ordinary Women. So check that out. You can also find me on Facebook. I know this is already going to Organizational Secrets for Empowered Women. Those who have registered to receive the webinar may not be a member of the group. So you can also follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. On the 4th of March, the next webinar I'm doing is on perfectionism and why it works against you. So that's a very interesting topic. It's a massive topic, and I will try and break it down. So yeah, webinars are live 9 a.m. So follow the link to register so you can get your copy. And thank you for joining me this morning. My name is Jodie Siemens from Taking Perspective.